By the time anyone on Earth realized something was wrong with the sky, it was already too late to pretend it was weather. First came the silence. Satellites stopped talking. GPS died in the space of a heartbeat. Air traffic control boards lit up with red as planes lost navigation and were forced into emergency landings. 1,000 pilots cursed at dead screens and flickering instruments. Down on the ground, people noticed their phones freezing, calls dropping, streams cutting off. At first, everyone blamed the usual suspects: bad internet, power cuts. Some big hack. Then the streaks appeared. From every continent, cameras caught the same terrifying beauty. Silver scars burning across the blue, like someone had taken a knife to the sky itself. They moved too fast, too straight, too intentional to be meteors. At the edge of the city, on the roof of a shabby 3-story repair shop, Rafi Qureshi watched the line spread with a wrench still in his hand. He'd always liked heights. As a kid, he climbed anything that looked like it would annoy adults. As an adult, he climbed telecom towers and rusty roofs because companies paid him to fix antennas nobody else wanted to wrangle. The shop's radio had died 5 minutes ago. The backup set he'd rigged out of spare parts was hissing static now. He'd just tilted the antenna to see if it was a problem when the sky tore open. "What the hell?" he whispered. Below him, traffic slowed. Horns blared. Somewhere a child started crying. The largest streak stopped, just stopped, high above the city. The air around it shimmered. It was too far away to see clearly with the naked eye, but Rafi squinted and saw something that made his skin crawl. The object wasn't falling. It was arriving. His phone vibrated once in his pocket, buzzed like a dying insect, and turned off. Every building around him seemed to go just a little bit darker as the power grid faltered. "Not good," he muttered. "Not good at all." The roof hatch banged open behind him. "Rafi!" someone shouted. "You seeing this?" It was Amir, the shop owner's son, already out of breath despite only climbing 2 floors. He looked like he'd run straight from the TV, where news anchors were probably having synchronized panic attacks. "You know more about this stuff, right?" Samir said, gulping air and pointing uselessly at the sky. "Tell me that's some kind of experiment." "Yeah," Rafi said. "If it is, no one told the laws of physics." High overhead, the hovering object pulsed once. The air around it rippled outward in concentric rings, invisible except for the way the clouds seemed to twist and fracture. Rafi didn't know much about astrophysics, but he knew when something was dumping obscene amounts of energy into the atmosphere. His instincts, sharpened by years of working with high-voltage, fragile equipment and very angry weather, were screaming at him now. "That's a ship," he said quietly. "It has to be. Nothing human hangs in the sky like that. Aliens." Samir laughed once, then heard his own voice and stopped. "No, come on, Yar. We don't get aliens. We get tax notices and electricity cuts." The object pulsed again. Every window facing the sky shattered at once. The sound hit them half a second later, a wall of pressure that knocked both men to their knees. Glass rained down onto cars and sidewalks. People screamed. Sirens wailed, some from alarms, some from actual emergency vehicles. Rafi shoved himself upright, ears ringing, chest tight. "Samir, get downstairs," he said. "Find your parents. Stay away from windows. Tell everyone to get away from anything electronic, if they can." "Why? What is it?" Samir's eyes were huge. "A bad day," Rafi said, "and maybe the first of many. Move." As Samir scrambled back inside, Rafi stayed where he was for a heartbeat longer, looking up at the hovering ship. He thought of all the science fiction movies he'd seen, all the times humans looked up and said some clever line. He didn't feel clever right now. He felt small, but small didn't mean helpless. Whoever they were, whatever they wanted, they had just broken his sky, his city, his planet. "All right," he said under his breath, as if the thing could hear him. "You picked the wrong world to bully." Then he grabbed his tool bag, slung it over his shoulder, and headed downstairs. If this was an invasion, it was going to break a lot more than glass and satellites. It was going to break infrastructure, networks, power, communication. And broken things were his specialty. The city descended into layered chaos. On the streets, ambulances tried to weave through traffic snarled by abandoned cars and shattered glass. Drone cameras buzzed into the air, trying to get a better look at the thing in the sky, until one by one they dropped out, their signals cut by whatever invisible field the alien ship was bleeding into the atmosphere. Hospitals switched to backup power. News anchors shouted over each other. People called their relatives until the networks overloaded and died entirely. In the repair shop's cramped back room, someone had dragged an old, dust-choked generator from the storage area. Rafi wiped oil off its casing with the sleeve of his shirt, cursing whoever last serviced it. "This piece of junk should have been retired in the last century," he muttered. "You can fix it, right?" asked Aisha, Samir's little sister, peeking from the doorway. She clutched a cracked tablet to her chest like a life raft. "Of course I can fix it," Rafi said. "I'm not going to let you face aliens without at least one working fan." The joke fell a little flat, but Aisha smiled anyway. He knelt, opened the side panel, and lost himself in a familiar mess of wires, fuel lines, and corroded fittings. Outside these walls, something unimaginably advanced was rewriting humanity's place in the universe. Inside the generator, soot and rust still answered to basic rules. That, at least, was comforting. Within 15 minutes, the generator sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. Lights flickered on in the back room. A cheap radio crackled, and then caught part of a broadcast. Global phenomenon. Seen over every major population center. Governments urging calm. Rafi tuned it as best he could. The signal was fragmentary, chopped by interference that sounded almost deliberate. Not a natural event. Repeating. Not a natural event. Unknown craft. Multiple reports of... The voice cut out, replaced by static in a harsh, unfamiliar tone like a digital growl. A new voice came through, distorted and cold. The language was nothing human, but there was rhythm in it. Structure. The hair on Rafi's arms rose. "That's them," Aisha whispered. After a few seconds, the alien broadcast cut off. A human anchor tried to speak again, voice visibly shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're being told this is a hijack of our transmission band. Our engineers." The radio died. The generator was still running. The fan still spun. Aisha's tablet still glowed. The signal itself had been killed. "Okay," Rafi said softly. "So they don't want us talking to each other." "Why?" Aisha asked. "Because people who can't talk can't organize," he said. "People who can't organize are easier to control." She frowned. "Like when bullies try to separate you from your friends." He looked at her, then at the humming generator. "That's exactly it," he said. "Except the bully is in orbit." A loud thump rattled the windows. Dust fell from the ceiling. Someone screamed in the next room. Samir burst in, panting. They landed. On the highway. You can see them from the roof. Big metal bugs with guns. "Aisha, stay here," Rafi said sharply. "No way, I'm coming," she protested. He met her eyes. There was fear there, but also stubbornness that matched his own. He sighed. "Fine," he said, "but you do exactly what I say. We're not going to fight them with your tablet." "Then what with—" Samir asked. Rafi's gaze drifted to the tangle of equipment stacked around the room. Coils of cable, spools of copper wire, old batteries, a surplus satellite dish he'd always meant to scrap. "With what they're not expecting," he said. 10 minutes later, they stood on a different rooftop, 1 block closer to highway. The air smelled of ozone and smoke. From here, they could see the alien landing clearly. 3 transports squatted on the cracked asphalt, each one a black, faceted shape like a cut gemstone. Ramps extended from their sides. Figures emerged, tall, armored, with jointed limbs and helmets that flowed seamlessly into their torsos. Their movements were precise, economical. No hurry, no fear. Crowds kept their distance, held back by confusion and a primal, shared terror. No one had told them whether this was war, first contact, or some impossible prank. No one was in charge out here. The police cars that had tried to set up a perimeter were now dark, their electronics fried. One of the armored aliens raised a device to its chest. A wave of something rolled out from it, rippling across a highway like heat over a desert. Every car engine within sight coughed and died. Headlights flickered out. Even Rafi's digital watch froze. EMP. Samir whispered. Something like it. Rafi said. Broad-spectrum disruption. The aliens wanted humans on foot, powerless, scared. The crowd scattered, fleeing into side streets and alleys, dragging children in suitcases. A few people tried to record with old analog cameras. One stepped forward and shouted something about peace, holding up empty hands. A blue-white flash lanced out from an alien weapon. The shouting man collapsed, his chest smoking. A hole burned clean through him. Aisha gasped. Samir swore. Rafi felt something inside him go very, very cold. The last fragile hope of, maybe they're friendly, snapped like a wire. Okay, he said. That's it. We're done hoping they'll be reasonable. What can we do? Aisha said, we don't even have working phones. Rafi's brain was already running faster than his fear, grabbing every piece of information and slotting into place. They disrupt electronics. They jam communications. They disable engines and power. So far, everything they'd done was based on one assumption, that they only had to beat human technology. They think this planet runs on circuits, he murmured. They've never seen us run on anger. Samir frowned. You're starting to sound like those movie speeches. Good, Rafi said. Movies got some things right. He opened the backpack he'd dragged up here. Inside was a mess of scavenged gear. Coils of wire, magnets, a cracked but functional analog voltmeter, a hand crank radio, and the heart of today's insanity, a compact microwave transmitter he'd cobbled together over years of messing with wireless networking and long-distance links. You remember that crazy project where I tried to bounce signals off the ionosphere? He asked Samir, the one the boss told you to stop before you cooked half the neighborhood? Samir said, yeah, this is the baby version of that, Rafi said, patting the transmitter. Lower power, tighter beam. But it still puts out a pretty nasty spike if you overdrive it. Aisha's eyes widened. You're going to use Wi-Fi on the aliens? Not exactly, Rafi said, but I'm going to remind them that they're not the only ones who can play with EM fields. He began setting up the dish, fingers moving with the speed of long practice. He anchored it to the parapet, pointed it roughly toward the transports, and wired the transmitter to the hand-crank generator. Old-school power. No batteries. No grid. Samir, you crank, he said. Aisha, you watch the aliens. Tell me if they do anything weird when I fire. What counts as weird? She asked. If they flinch, I'll take it, he said. She nodded, swallowing hard. As Samir began to crank, the transmitter whined to life. The dish hummed faintly, the air around it tingling with static. Rafi watched the analog needle on the voltmeter creep up. This was insane. This was tiny. This was a mosquito buzzing at a tank. But tanks hated sand in the wrong place. And the one thing Rafi knew, deep in his bones, was this. Every system has a failure point, especially the ones that think they don't. He threw the switch. The beam from Rafi's improvised transmitter was invisible, silent, and pathetically weak compared to the energies the alien ships were throwing around. It didn't hit their hulls like a weapon. It slipped into the air around them like a whisper in a crowded room. On the highway, one of the armored aliens staggered half a step. What happened? Aisha breathed. Could be coincidence, Rafi said. Again. He adjusted the frequency knob by instinct, searching for resonance, like tuning an old radio by ear. He didn't know the aliens' operating bands. He didn't know their shield architecture, but he knew how interference sounded. The transmitter whined higher. The voltmeter needle danced. Samir's arms were already shaking from cranking. Hang in there, Rafi said. Just a little more. He flipped the switch again. This time they both saw it. The air around the nearest transport flickered, brief but visible, like heat shimmers suddenly turning sharp. The lights on the underside of the ship dimmed for a fraction of a second. On the ground, two aliens whipped their helmeted heads toward the rooftop where Rafi stood. Their weapons hummed louder. Oh, they noticed, Samir said. They definitely noticed. Good, Rafi said tightly. That means we're in their way. A shot slammed into the parapet 3 meters to their left, blowing concrete into dust. Down! Rafi shouted, dragging Aisha and Samir below the rooftop edge. Another blast hit closer. The transmitter shrieked and died, the dish sparking as its circuits fried. Well, Rafi coughed through the dust. So much for round one. That's it? We poked them, and now we get vaporized. Samir said, voice high with panic. Rafi's heart was racing, but underneath the adrenaline was something else. Excitement, not the good kind. The kind that said this is working. They're shooting at us, he said. Specifically at us. Not the crowd. Not random buildings. Us. And that's good because... Aisha demanded. Because whatever this little thing did, it wasn't nothing, Rafi said. For a second, I made their perfect machine stutter. They overreacted. More blasts hit the building. Somewhere below, someone screamed as part of the facade collapsed. Okay, Samir said. Maybe don't make them overreact again. Rafi peered over the edge cautiously. The aliens were advancing now, using their own ship as cover. They weren't invincible gods anymore. They were soldiers who just realized the bugs on this planet could bite back. And if one man with a hacked-together transmitter could get their attention, what if others do the same? Rafi said softly, What? Aisha asked. He dropped back behind cover, mind racing faster than his mouth. Think about it. There are people like me in every city. Radio nerds, tinkerers, ham operators, engineers, scrapyard kings. If we can't talk to each other digitally, we can still improvise locally. With what? Junk. Samir asked. Yes, Rafi said. With junk. With analog. With whatever still works when their fancy disruption fields hit. They're targeting high-tech infrastructure. That's their weakness. They're optimized for enemies like themselves. And we're not like them, Aisha said slowly. Rafi looked at her, pride flickering through the fear. Exactly. Another blast hit the parapet, showering them with grit. All right, he said. New plan. We survive the next 10 minutes. Then we spread a message the old-fashioned way. How? Samir asked. We can't exactly post a tutorial now. Rafi dug into his bag and pulled out the hand-crank radio. Its casing was cracked, but the core worked. He'd already proven that. Shortwave, he said. There are still people listening. Somewhere. We start a meme the aliens can't jam. Noise them out. Tell people. Any electromagnetic garbage you can generate, do it. Overload their sensors. Make the whole planet a storm. That'll jam our own stuff, too, Samir pointed out. Rafi shrugged. They already did that. Let's make it worse for them. We're already in the dark. Might as well make it loud. Aisha smiled, small but fierce. Turn Earth into the universe's noisiest neighborhood. Exactly, Rafi said. We're not going to out-laser them, but we can out-chaos them. The building shook again. Dust rained down. Somewhere below, structural beams groaned. Time to move, he said. They scrambled down the stairwell as chunks of masonry crashed behind them. On the second floor, they found frightened tenants huddled in the corridor. What's happening? An old woman asked. Aliens, Samir panted. They're shooting the building. The woman nodded once, as if that explained everything. Han, of course. I knew the day would be strange when my tea spilled this morning. Rafi almost laughed. Humans were absurd. Is there a basement? He asked. Yes, but it's full of things, she said vaguely. Good, Rafi said. Things are exactly what I need. The basement was a dragon's hoard of old electronics. Discarded TVs, broken fans, tangled wiring, motors, batteries that might or might not still hold a charge. In other words, heaven. Rafi set the radio on a crate, extended its telescoping antenna, and began tuning. Static. Whines. Faint voices fading in and out. Come on, he muttered. There has to be someone out there yelling into the void. A voice cut through, faint but clear. If anyone can hear this, this is Kilo 9 from the Oldham station in Sector 12. We are under attack. Repeat, We are under attack. Rafi grabbed the mic. Kilo 9, doesn't matter what we call this, he said. We hear you. Listen carefully. We think we found a way to annoy them. He explained, rapid fire, the disruption, the flicker, the overreaction, the idea of turning every scrap of salvageable tech into a noise bomb, cheap motor spinning coils, spark gaps, overloaded transformers, anything that screamed electromagnetically. The ham operator on the other end listened in stunned silence. That might get us all killed, the man said. They're already doing a good job of that, Rafi said. This doesn't have to win the war. It just has to prove they don't own the battlefield. A pause. Then, copy that. I'll relay on every band I can hit. You are insane, my friend. Yeah, Rafi said. Lucky for us, insanity is a human specialty. He hung the mic back and turned to the basement full of people. All right, he said. Who here is good with tools? Hands rose, tentative at first, then more confidently. People who spent their lives fixing what other people broke. People who'd never held a gun but had rewound motors, soldered boards, patched dying appliances because buying new ones was an option. Congratulations, Rafi said. The universe finally sent us a problem that needs your kind of crazy. He picked up a length of copper wire, a small AC motor, and a cracked battery. We're going to make a mess, he said. The biggest, loudest, most creatively stupid electromagnetic mess these aliens have ever seen. Aisha grinned. And if they don't like it? Rafi looked up, through the concrete, through the streets and smoke and shattered glass, to the ship squatting over his city. Then they can go home, he said. Hours later, the reports began to trickle in. Shortwave bands crackled with frantic, excited voices from other cities, other countries. We rigged 10 old transmitters to the water tower. They tried to land near our power plant, and half their drones just stalled. Their targeting beams keep glitching. They're recalibrating constantly, like they can't get a clean read. On the Valian flagship, deep in orbit, fleets of Enforcer commanders send increasingly urgent updates. Environmental noise increasing. Local tech level higher than expected. Primitive emissions interfering with targeting matrices. Recommend escalation of suppression measures. In the command nexus, a senior strategist frowned at the streams of error reports. These are pre-FDL primitives, he said. Their weapons barely scratch our armor. How are they causing this much disruption? Their systems are undisciplined strategists, replied a technician. Non-standard, illogical. They are generating chaotic emissions outside normal combat parameters. In other words, the strategist said slowly, they are attacking us with garbage? Yes, the tech said. Silence hung in the chamber for a moment. Then the strategist said something no one in the Valian fleet had ever recorded in a campaign log before. Perhaps, he said quietly, we underestimated the tactical potential of a species that has never cleaned up after itself. On Earth, in a basement full of humming buzzing, sparking junk, Rafi sagged against the wall, exhausted but grinning. Through the radio, through the trembling building, through the chaos outside, he could feel it. The invaders still had superior weapons. They still owned the sky for now. But for the first time, they were not calm. They were not efficient. They were not in complete control. Humanity, with its messy cities and tangled power lines and improvised machines, had done the one thing the Valian had never prepared for. It had turned the whole planet into noise. Not just electromagnetic noise, but human noise. Laughter in the face of fear. Stubbornness instead of surrender. Millions of people deciding, separately but together, that they were not going to be neat, quiet victims. Aisha sat down beside Rafi, leaning on his shoulder. Do you think we'll win? She asked. He thought the ship still in orbit, the army still landing, the government scrambling to coordinate. I don't know, he said honestly. Wars aren't won in one day, or by one basement, but I know this much. He gestured at the web of wires and spinning coils, at the radio, at the people still working despite everything. Today they learned something about us, he said. We're not just a resource. We're not just numbers. We're a problem they don't have a clean solution for. What's the moral, then? Aisha asked, half teasing, half serious. "You always say good stories need a moral." Rafi smiled, tired but fierce. "Maybe it's this," he said. "Don't attack a planet built by people who fix things for a living. We will find a loose screw in your empire." He paused and added, "And never mistake humanity's mess for weakness. It's just creativity with the safety limits removed." Above them, the ship in the sky flickered once more, adjusting to the storm of noise from the world below. For the first time in its long, victorious history, the Valiant Empire realized it had miscalculated. They weren't fighting a backward, frightened, simple-minded species. They were fighting humans. And humans, especially when cornered, had a habit of turning even their broken pieces into weapons.